There we go. Okay. All right. This is Katrina Madewell. We're going to be doing Tampa Home Talk. Let me get recording because we're going to be airing this on Friday post Milton. We're obviously pre-Milton right now. So those of you watching the live stream, well, welcome. Thank you for watching. And we'll be sure to air this Friday morning. So hang tight. First segment, 14 minutes. Ready?
Ready.
No. Welcome. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, and boy, do we have an October this year. As a matter of fact, Erin Dunavant was our guest last week. She's back again this week, and we are actually pre-recording this show pre-Milton. So this is going to air once Milton has already hit wherever it's going on Friday. And I want to say first and foremost, wherever this thing goes, especially if we get impacted here in the Bay Area like we're expected to, I want to let you know that, we have been a pillar of the community, and I will be helping anyone impacted. So if you're listening to this broadcast, or you know someone that has been injured or harmed by way of the storm or needs some help, I want you to call or text our off-air number, which is 813-377-2775, 813-377-2775. There'll be a lot of ways you can help, whether that's aid, money. We're going to figure it out and get people what they need. We certainly are not going to let what happened in North Carolina happen here, although I think we have a much better catastrophic plan in place just with our government in general in Florida. So with that being said, Leo, I'm 100% sure you want to jaw jack around the fact that it's October, and we're not out of the woods yet. There's potentially even another system that might develop within a couple of weeks after Milton. So feel free to chime in on this. And then we're going to get back with Erin. There was so much we did not cover last week. And we're going to also talk a lot this hour on, especially people that were impacted. What do you need to do when another storm rolls through, right? Because there's a whole bunch of things that you need to know now before it's too late. So I'm hoping the message gets out on the live stream and that people share. So Leo, feel free to jump in.
No, I just want to say something I thought I would never say in my lifetime. I have been thoroughly impressed with government recently. We talked about this storm system last Friday as a potential threat. By midday Saturday, I saw it for what it was, and so did the local politicians. Everyone from City of St. Pete, City of Tampa, Ron DeSantis, political parties aside, the governmental response,
yes,
pre-hurricane warnings being issued, I have been floored in a good way.
I'm proud of our state. I am proud of our state, and I am proud of our politicians banding together to be prepared for this.
I mean, they didn't have to do anything until a watch came out or a warning came out, but by then it would have been too late.
Yeah.
And they all preemptively got on board. I mean, evacuations were ordered before watches were issued. And then when we were left with, as Jane said, Jane Castor, mayor of Tampa, the largest evacuation that's happened since Irma, we were already in motion. So I know I bash government a lot because of, government. They stepped up.
So I take that road on County Line Road. That kind of, it's like parallel to 54, Leo, where we host the show in our office. And so that road goes over I-75. And I can tell you on Monday in the morning, I was driving towards Bruce B. Downs East, gridlock, bumper to bumper traffic every direction. And I went over that bridge 4 times, and every single time I-75 northbound was packed. And the last time was probably around, I don't know, 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and it was still bumper to bumper. And even at 1 a.m., it was still bumper to bumper. So traffic has been a mess getting out of the state. It's going to be nuts Monday.
Oh, it'll be totally nuts.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, just to follow up on what Leo said too, I was down at my law office, which is 1 block from Bayshore Boulevard. So obviously we had to prep the office for surge or wind or whatever it may be.
Did you guys get any
law partner.
flooding or anything, Aaron, from the last
We have
storm?
not gotten any flooding from Helene. We got really lucky. It did go part of the way up Bayshore, and I don't know if you saw the pictures of the water coming over the Bayshore Boulevard, but one thing that I learned that was impressive was just all of the vehicles. Everybody worked apart from party lines to get all the vehicles to work to get the debris off of the sides of the roads from everybody that had reeled from Helene.
Yeah.
So that was another, I mean, and it's still not where it probably needs to be, but I know there were like police out directing traffic, almost like a funeral processional of like debris trucks carrying away debris, because obviously you don't want all that debris out there flying around like missiles.
And I love that the governor's talking about it. I mean, that's great because people don't think about that. And we have so many people new to our state, they would not even think that a refrigerator could get flung, you know, however many hundreds of yards.
Welcome to Florida.
Yeah.
Right.
So I really hope that everybody in that area is safe. I know someone's going to get it. We just don't know where. So this is going to air Friday morning. We'll know by that time. And again, if you need some help, please call or text our off-air number, which is 813-377-2775. We want to be a resource for any of our listeners, especially if you're a regular listener or you know someone's been impacted that really needs help. 813-377-2775. So let me just go straight for the jugular on this one, Aaron, and let's talk about it like from where we are right now all the way to when this thing gets dicey in litigation, right? And both of you can speak from this place, and we touched on it very briefly last week when we said, you know, there's so much that goes into what came first, the wind or the rain, and there's meteorologists and like all this stuff. So talk about it from a litigation perspective. Let's imagine we're however many years in the future and you're litigating these claims, right? And there was some damage in Helene and now there's damage in Milton. Walk through some stuff that people should know that the lay person is just not going to know.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're seeing as we're going through in the aftermath of Helene and on the front of Milton is a lot of people are told to get wet drywall and things out of their house post-hurricane, and especially when you have flooding. So what you have is a situation where people have cut out anywhere from between 2 and 6 foot of drywall due to flooding from Helene. And now they're going, oh my gosh, we're about to get hit again. So much for all that work I did. Not so fast. If you do document that 3 or 4 foot of drywall that you cut out, and you document your piles of debris by the curb, and you hopefully did what Leo always tells you to do and went earlier this year and took your before and after videos of your property, both your real property and your contents. And if you have covered for other structures, fences, sheds, pool cages, go in and outside of your property, as Leo recommended on our last show.
And if you're listening to this on the live stream, do it now.
Do it now.
Yes.
Go take pictures and videos.
Right. Please do a post-Helene pre-Milton assessment. And here's why. You don't want the carrier to blame Helene for Milton damage, right? And you're going to see more wind with Milton. So you're going to want to pay attention to those things too. You may even want to check your attic. And while you're doing your pictures and videos of your room, if you're a person that has attic access, go and scope your attic. I'm not going to ask people to go onto their roofs that aren't professionals, but scope your attic if you have attic access and can get there with ease. Take pictures of your contents, take videos, bring a flashlight up there if it's not lit. Make sure, document and report, document and report, document and report's the most important thing. Lastly, because you're going to have more wind than with Milton and not with Helene. We didn't see much with Helene. It was mostly flooding. Document your ceilings. I just took a 10-minute video of the Danahy Donovan building, and I took every photograph that I could and video of the ceiling. So because I want to be able to show, look, there were no leaks after Helene. All of these leaks are from Milton. So it's very important to document even in between these storms, and obviously get out of Dodge if you're in an evacuation zone or anywhere near water. Obviously do that and heed the mayor's warnings.
Yeah, so I would couple on that. Since this is airing after the storm event hits, same thing. When you can come back, and don't be in a rush to come back. This is Friday morning. We're going to probably have some level of impact on the west coast of Florida at some point between Wednesday night and Thursday mid-morning. Don't be in a rush to come back. First responders, they get access first. Places are going to need permits to get back, but do not be in a rush to come back. I fled for the storm. I'm in Tallahassee. I'm not planning on coming back till Friday night. I already have reserved another hotel that I can cancel for a week, just in case I don't have power. And
I'll tell you, somebody will snap it up. I mean, our Airbnb, we had someone book this week from Illinois, and they canceled. And before I could even see the cancellation, someone from St. Pete booked it.
Yeah. But the key here is don't be in a rush to get back. Now, I'm going to conflict myself with my next statement. Mold takes 72 hours to grow and develop. So if you can't make it back within 72 hours and you've had this leak or you've had this water intrusion, you're going to have mold. But odds are, if you have that, you're probably not going to have electricity anyway. So again, don't be in a rush to get back, to get in the way of first responders, or to get to your house to realize there is damage and you don't know what you're needing to try and salvage, or there isn't damage and you don't have electricity. So now what? You clean out your fridge? So there's really no rush to get back, especially if you're beachside, if you're zone A, if you're zone B, if you're zone AB, and if you're told to evacuate, there really is no rush to get back. Let people do what they need to do first. Then you can come back. If I was in an evacuation zone, as much as I want to be back, I would probably not come back for at least 5 days. I would be, if I've evacuated, I've probably evacuated. I know some people have evacuated Wesley Chapel to Brandon, Sefner, gone to Orlando. If you can evacuate to a place that has utilities, it has amenities, what are you rushing back to see? You're either rushing back to see you have damage and you don't have electricity, or you're rushing back to see you don't have damage and you don't have electricity, or you don't have damage and you do have electricity. None of those scenarios are particularly good. So don't be in a rush. If you know people who have stuck around, if you know people who are going to do that rushing to get back, get them to get you that information, because we've all experienced the massive traffic jams. Even if you didn't evacuate, just getting around Tampa, we've all experienced those massive traffic jams. Do you want to be part of it on the way back in, but the people you are in traffic with are your power company people, are your tree haulers, or your debris haulers? Stay out of their way. There's no rush to get back to Tampa or Port Charlotte or Bradenton or wherever ground zero is, or even 50 miles away from ground zero. There's no rush to get back. Let the first responders do what they do best.
And traffic is going to be rough. It will be. So well said, Leo. Definitely don't get in the way of our first responders that are trying to restore power for everyone. Talking in the double-edged sword of that, and we got about a minute before we have to roll to a break, Aaron. How does that impact it if it's past 72 hours? So let's say Thursday, at midnight, you got Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday, 72 hours, mold's going to start setting in. Is there anything someone should be thinking about from a insurance litigation perspective, with that being said?
Yeah, so the reason Leo said it was a double-edged sword is because of your duty to mitigate under the policy, number one, and then number two, FEMA's failure to cover for things like mold. Also, a lot of our HO3 policies cap mold at somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000, and so you have to worry about caps. But safety's got to be first priority here, and I agree with Leo to a large extent. Some solutions you can have are: do you have a family member that maybe lived in Valrico or Brandon who has access to the property and can check on the property? So that's an option.
When we come back, I'd like to talk about what we need to know if you've had 2 back-to-back events. This is Tampa Home Talk, 813-377-2775, 813-377-2775. We'll be right back. Right on time.
Yeah, we're rolling. It's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Thank you for getting us back on the old this is airing Friday, because it's hard not to talk in real time,
I'm talking about I'm already future planning. So yeah, that's my message that I want to get out is there's no rush to get back. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the big message right now. There's no rush to get back to town. I mean, if
All
this
right,
thing does,
let me restart. We'll just talk about it on the air. Okay, hang tight. 11 minutes on this one. Leo, you can bring us back when I give you the hand wave there.
welcome home. This is Leo Kane with Barrel Engineering and Inspection, bringing you this inspection tip of the week. I said it before the break. I'll say it after the break. Can't stress this enough. Do not be in a rush to get back to town. You will, if you're hunkered down, as the Jim Cantoris out there will tell you to do, the Mike Bettis, Jim Cantoris, love those guys, met him twice. Do not be in a rush to get home. Let the first responders in. You'll know how bad it is. If this thing hits Sarasota, if this thing hits Bradenton, if this thing does the wobble, hits Bradenton and wobbles up the bay, you'll know how bad it is. You'll be watching the coverage. You'll be watching the coverage, hopefully from a place that has electricity, that has running water. If you've evacuated further out from Tampa, if you evacuated to Ocala, the villages, Tallahassee, Pensacola, Atlanta, you'll know how bad it is. There's no reason to rush to get home to see if you were the recipient of the worst or if not. Let the first responders in. If you have someone local, call them, have them check on your place, have them check on something. There will be fuel shortages. There will be supply shortages. The more devastating the storm, the harder it is to get that stuff in. If you are re-entering an area after the storm has been hit, I'm in Tallahassee right now. I plan to stop in Crystal River to get gas. I then plan to stop halfway from Crystal River to Tampa, probably when I get towards 52 Newport Richey, and get more gas topped off. If you've evacuated, hit your Costco, hit your Sam's Club, hit your Publix from where you've evacuated. You want to buy supplies there. You don't want to come back to town and expect supplies to be there.
Yeah, well said. I was watching a YouTube video from some citizen responders that were helping people in North Carolina, and they were saying something as simple as they were bringing their own food. They were bringing everything possible because they knew, that they didn't want to take resources from the local people. And it was bad. I mean, there's so many, the maps weren't even routing them correctly. And, people were just looking for very basic things and getting aggressive, like many of us would if you were down to your last resort and you didn't have baby formula, right? So we don't know what it's going to look like. Just be prepared. Some of these tips are going to be great. Again, our off-air number is 813-377-2775 if you need some help. 813-377-2775. Aaron, let's talk about what happens if someone has had two back-to-back events or two back-to-back claims. Those are treated completely separate, right? With two different limits, or how does that work if it's on the same policy?
Yeah, so the most policies cover per occurrence. So your limit would be per occurrence. Now, it becomes a little tricky where you have like a situation where you just can't tell. Like if you have surge from Helene and then you get surge again and it comes in and it hits your now ripped out drywall and studs and etc. That's going to be a very difficult situation. And so you may want to check your deductibles to see if it's even worth. I mean, I ran into a guy yesterday with a $39,000 deductible. So the issue there is that, it may not be worth it for him to make a second claim. But if you have a low deductible and and it's very easy to differentiate your damage between Helene and Milton. For example, Milton may hit Tampa Bay at a 3 or at a 4. So we're going to hear a lot more about wind damage. We're going to see ripped off shingles, damaged roofs, ceiling leaking, damage from debris, trees, limbs fly off and hit homes and hit glazing and windows. So you're going to deal with a lot more wind. So I think there will be a way to tell the difference between the damage because the storms themselves are going to produce a little bit of different damage. But just be looking at, those are the things to look at, but most are per occurrence. So technically, if you had a Helene claim, you could also make a Milton claim. Just be aware that sometimes making multiple claims on the same policy can cause, it'll to be a little bit difficult to maintain insurance coverage, but it's always difficult to maintain insurance coverage here in Florida at a good rate.
Well, I think many people are going to be in that boat after back-to-back storms. It's just going to happen. It's just
Yes.
going to happen.
I know, like when Ian and Nicole hit, you had to think Ian hit September 27th to 29th, and Nicole hit November 10th.
Right.
We had to differentiate as a forensic engineer the difference between Ian and Nicole. And I would always ask the attorneys, the Aarons out there, what's my policy period? And if they told me Ian and Nicole were in the same policy period, I'm like, it was a sigh of relief, because you have to just prove the damage happened during the policy period.
That's right.
And I'll take
how does that matter? How is that beneficial when it's in the same policy period versus you started over?
So that's a good question. So it's beneficial, especially if it's the same carrier, because then they're not going to be going like this. They're liable for it either way. And Leo's exactly right. On the first line of our jury verdict form, the first question is typically, especially on denied claims and partially denied claims, is did the insured prove by the greater weight of the evidence that the damage occurred during the policy period? And that right there is the insured's burden. And then it becomes, the insured giant's job to then prove, no, that damage is excluded or accepted from coverage. And that's usually the second line there on our jury verdict form. So Leo makes a good point. It's easier if it's the same carrier. If it's a different carrier, the trickiness becomes State Farm wants to say it was Allstate's policy period, and Allstate is going to want to say that it's State Farm's policy period. I know
you are going to earn your money for these litigations to come in the next several years. I'm just saying, you are going to earn your money.
Well, they wiped out our ability to recover attorney fees, but we will not be short of any claims. That is very true. And we're still going to be helping people. I mean, regardless of the ability to be able to recover attorney fees, we'll work on contingency. We'll make it work. So
one of the tips I want to just remind you of that we talked about last week was be aware of what your deductible is. Aaron, you touched on that a little bit. Maybe you didn't have anything from Helene, but perhaps you're going to have something from Milton. Be aware of what your deductible is. And before you call the insurance company, don't inquire with them. Ask your agents, read your policy, look at what your deductible is, because you might want to assess that damage independently on your own before you alert the insurance company there was damage, right?
And I think that's very fair. Like I said, I just ran into that gentleman that had the $39,000 deductible. So that means he has to pay, for people who are not familiar with exactly how homeowners deductibles work, that means his roof is $80,000. It's an expensive roof, but he's got to front the bill for the first half of that roof. Okay. So we're seeing what we see on a typical day in my office is we may see 2% of coverage A for the hurricane deductible. Maybe a pipe burst is only like a $2,500 deductible, but hurricanes can sometimes be 2% of coverage A. And coverage A for our listeners is your dwelling coverage, or the coverage for your house or building. So sometimes we see 2% of coverage A. Sometimes we see up to 5% of coverage A. So those can be high deductibles. And so you want to look and make sure that making a claim isn't going to be more expensive than just doing the work yourself. For an example, if you have a roofer look and it's only going to be a repair and it's only a few problems that may not necessitate a new roof, you may be better coming out of pocket and just doing those repairs.
And by the way, Aaron, we have a lot of really, really great resources. So if you're listening to this and you find yourself with downed trees, you find yourself needing some help on the roof, we have some amazing connections that will not rip you off. These are our regular go-to providers, and they will be a great resource for you. So it's another reason to hang on to our number and call or text if you need something. 813-377-2775. 813-377-2775. Aaron, will you finish what you're piggybacking on there?
Oh yeah, no, I was just going to say, you just want to really make sure, just like Katrina said, talk to your agent, look at your policy, check. Usually the deductibles are right on your declarations page, and it'll say it right under your list of coverages, A, B, C, D, and E. It'll say right there whether or not you have a high deductible or not. So I highly recommend looking at that before you make a claim.
Now,
Oh, we have my
curious-
daughter Grace. Hello, everyone.
yeah, curious question, and this maybe a little bit of out of everyone's lane that's on here, but just curious if anyone wants to comment on it, and you can check with your CPA. Someone had some damage, and let's say they had to pay out of pocket. Any tax deductions on that? Any possible deductions?
Well, we usually try to take care of that in our release. Tax deductions.
Yeah.
Possibly, I would have to talk to a tax attorney to be absolutely sure.
Yeah.
I know that for tax purposes, we don't want the income tax when we settle a case. And so we try to look at language in the release to save our insureds from any negative tax consequences. But as far as tax breaks, I'm not 100% about that, to be honest.
Probably at least on an investment property, I would imagine you could at least get that, but good question for a CPA for sure.
And the schools are closed, if you all didn't know. The
schools are closed. We're live. We're pre-Milton. We're going to be airing post-Milton. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, and our off-air number, if you got some questions, you want some more information, is 813-377-2775. That's our off-air number. You can call or text that, 813-377-2775. This is Tampa Home Talk. Stick around. We'll be right back.
Who are these?
That's my friend Katrina, and that's Leo.
Hi.
Get you a snack out of the cupboard. All those snacks Dad bought are over in the cupboard, right in the front row.
Good stuff we get to do on a pre-record. All right, 14 minutes. Next segment. Here we go. Welcome back and welcome home. This is Tampa Home Talk, your go-to real estate radio show here in the Tampa Bay market. 813-377-2775. Sometimes the words come out and sometimes they don't. Sometimes
Katrina,
they're a little jumbled.
Got a question for you. What happens to the real estate market in the greater Tampa Bay area after a storm like this?
You know, it's funny. I've been having that conversation with people. Of course, you would ask me that on the air. And what I've told people is, you know, we've had this a little bit of a change from like June or July. And it's interesting because people that I've known that have been here their whole lives, some people I know that live on the beaches are saying like they're done. They're either moving off the coastline, but close enough to get to the beach, or they're moving out of Florida entirely. And I do think there'll be a pretty good percentage of people that came here post-COVID that are freaked out by the hurricanes because, you know, you watch it on the news, all you're going to see is the bad. You won't see the other 80+% of the houses that are standing with no damage, right? But you're going to see the worst of the worst on the news. I do think there will have some impact to the real estate market, and I do think it's going to make some of our data really freaking weird for the last part of the year, because I think what's going to happen is you're going to have probably this little bit of a lull where there's housing shortages and people are looking to rent or buy. And then you're going to see that probably a downward trend of inventory and then a spike back up once properties get repaired. That would be my prediction. Of course, I love that these are recorded so you guys can go back and spot check me and see how accurate I am, my predictions. But I would bet that you're going to see exactly what I said, probably a little bit of a dip for a couple months and a little bit of a spike upward. So we were trending around a 4 or 5 month supply of homes. When we look at the absorption rate, which is still a seller's market, I think we're going to continue to see that. And I think we're going to get a swing the other way for a minute. We'll see. It'll be fun to report the numbers, you know, in the coming weeks and months ahead. What do you think about that? You think I have
a follow-up question to that as well. So right now on the news, they're putting a lot of emphasis on the fact that, and I didn't know this prior to the news bragging about it, that Tampa is the most storm surge prone area in the world. I didn't know that prior to the news saying that in the world. So I look at what happened to New Orleans when Katrina hit, and then when Harvey and Ike hit Houston.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the population from New Orleans moves to Houston. The population from Houston moves to Dallas. Where does the population from Tampa move after an event like this? Because we're going to have a migration of people. People aren't going to be able to afford to renew their homes. People are going to have to sell their homes to hedge funds and then wait for people like Aaron to get their money back. It's going to be even more difficult since if they move out of their home, it does. We talked about this last week on how difficult it makes for the homes to be bought. I mean, for the claims to process. So where do you think, Katrina, the people from Tampa who've now learned that we've overpopulated the most storm surge prone area in the world. Where do they migrate to? Do they migrate up the I-4 corridor? Do they leave Florida entirely? Where do you think they all go?
Well, you have to think, I've lived in Tampa my whole life. So I'll be exactly 50 in a month. And so that means I've been here almost 50 years. And so out of all the years and everything I've seen, I think a lot of your native people like me, or people that have lived here for a very long time, like 20 years or more, I think you'll see them migrate somewhere around the Citrus County area. A little more inland, but where you can go buy new construction for $300,000 or a little less on a really nice piece of land with no restrictions. That's where I think you're going to see people migrate to if and when the storm hits. And you may remember, because I've said this multiple times over the years, I mean, my husband worked for the city of Tampa for 32 years. And so he was what we would call a first responder. He worked for stormwater. He managed all the push crews that would go out and send the street sweepers and the crews that would clear the roads for police and fire. So literally, like right after the power trucks, they're the next ones that go before even police and fire get on the road. And so, you know, these are your first responders. And so he's lived here forever, like me, you know, same amount of time, dang near. And so I'll tell you, one of the things that he has always said, like when we've talked about moving at different times, and we've looked at areas like South Tampa and South of Gandy and different things like that. And at one point we were looking at a house in Davis Island many years ago.
Oh, wow.
Picked up a house in Davis Island. I really wanted to buy it. And he was like, absolutely not. We are not living anywhere near South Tampa or anywhere in those neighboring areas. We're just not, because he knows how low that area is to the base flood elevation or sea level. And so essentially he was like, yeah, no, not happening. So with that being said, it was never really an option, you know, with my husband, but I think you'll have some people in there that get a lot of damage that are going to have to sell for just land value and take that as a down payment on a new home. And it's sad that we're going to see a lot of that, but I do believe we'll see a lot of that.
Yeah, I bet so. I think nobody knows the market better than you, Katrina. So I'm curious to see if your predictions pan out. So save this somewhere so we know.
It's always on YouTube. It's recorded on a podcast, so they're always recorded. But I mean, you can ask Leo. My predictions regarding the housing market have been pretty spot on. Like in terms of the way things are going, the way rates are going to go. When people kept saying the rates are going to drop, I'm like, no, they're not. Wait for it. They're not going to drop. And I was right. And then when I said, okay, we're going to get one, I think it'll be a quarter or half. Definitely, I think it'll be about 0.5%. Spot on. So, you know, and I think with this kind of stuff happening, you know, in our area and in many other states, good chance we'll probably see another quarter point drop, maybe even 0.5, right? Depending on the devastation, just to help spark the economy a little bit, because so many people are going to have to replace these lower interest rate loans. Some of them are having to rebuy everything in their home. I mean, there's a lot of layers here to this. And then let's not forget about insurance. I mean, insurance is going to be a freaking mess in the state of Florida. Like, it's already a mess. It's going to get worse. And so I think a lot of people are going to flock towards these newer home constructions with the newer building codes.
Yeah.
So you have to keep in mind that they've said that the I-4 corridor is the 7th largest economy in the U.S. And I believe it. You got Tampa, you've got Orlando, you've got the rise of Lakeland, the rise of Plant City, and then that just extends over to Daytona. Okay, Daytona, good bike week. But anyway, that Tampa to Orlando segment's the 7th largest, and that's the path of the storm. That's going to be hard hit. Like, regardless of what this thing does between now and Friday, when this is recorded, it's still going to be hard hit. So
I think it's going to have a little weeble wobble south. We'll see if I'm accurate. That's what I think. It's my prediction.
My prediction's a wobble north after it hits Bradenton. But anyway.
Wait, you're saying Bradenton first and then?
Yeah. Oh, you think it's going to pull an Irma and hit twice?
Yeah, it's gonna wobble.
Okay.
I do think
regardless, this is on Friday. So what I was getting at, though, is the price of construction has already been drastically increased. Citizens got their way with the bill, House Bill 1121, lowering the useful life of shingle roofs. We already don't have enough trades out there, enough plumbers, electricians. We don't have enough trades out there to do the construction work. We've been in a supply crunch for a while. This is going to make the cost of construction go up even further. We had Senate Bill 4D. You've heard me talking about the condominium bill, having to do all these capital improvement plans. I've seen prices go up 30% in a year of doing these studies. The price can only drastically increase from here. If the 7th largest economy in the US takes a devastating hit to its infrastructure, both utilities and houses and businesses and all that, the cost of construction has to respond. It has to increase. If we can find the workers, we're going to have issues with the quality of the workers, where they're coming from, following Florida building code versus wherever. We don't have enough workers in Florida. So we get people from Texas, Oklahoma, the Midwest, they flock here. They're going to be building to a different building code. And building departments will be waiving permits. They'll be doing everything after the fact type permit. It's going to be really interesting in a bad way to see how the economy responds in this area, with price increases, labor shortages, and just people trying to get their lives back to normal.
Hey, Leo, on that note, I've got a question for you. How do you think, like, this, if this is a direct, like, really devastating storm like Katrina was for New Orleans on our area, how do you think this might further change the building codes? Like, what things do you think they'll start to implement that's not required now?
I think we're going to see a change to the flood codes. I mean, Adiala was a wake-up call. Helene was a wake-up call. And then this is going to be a potential double storm surge. So thinking about it from that standpoint, the building code's good. But when you have a cubic yard of water weighs 2,000 pounds and it's moving, that's what you have to build structures for. I mean, everything's been wind. The new roofing code is for wind. The new roofing code has 2 layers of underlayment to protect you in case you lose the primary. Everything's been wind oriented. I think we're going to see a sharp shift. It's already started. We're going to see a sharp shift in the building code to address surge, to address people are building too close to the water. And Zone B got evacuated from Tampa. They want people in Zone C out. So how close is too close? But we're going to see. Where
is that? Do you know where B and C is? I don't even know.
Yeah. So A is basically all of South Tampa.
Coast, yeah.
B extends up to basically Kennedy. I
Okay.
mean, so those are the other zones. Like all of Pinellas is A, B, and C.
Right.
That's all of Pinellas. So I mean, you have to think we're going to see the changes to the building code when it comes to storm surge. What does that look like? If the old logic was breakaway walls, build higher. So if you had walls that could collapse in a storm event, you didn't build in your garage level, water went through, and you had your breakaway walls, then you had your support piers. Support piers go deeper, they go into the ground more, they're able to withstand more of the push. And then you have all your electricity, your appliances, they're all elevated.
Mhm.
But we just saw a record storm surge in Clearwater from Helene at 6.6 feet.
Right.
This ranch style home as we know it, it's going to be a thing of the past, I think, in the not too distant future.
I mean, we had this movement towards slab on grade construction. We might have a movement now away from it back to piers. I said, I live in a 100-year-old home, been around for 100 years. It's not slab on grade. I don't get the settlement issues of a slab on grade home. When my utilities go, they're easier to replace than a slab on grade home. You can get access to what you need. I think.
Yeah, think about the pipes alone, like trying to get to plumbing pipes under a house when it's in a slab versus under a pier.
So I really think you're going to see more of the rise of what's called an elevated slab. You're going to see a home that's built, when you look at it straight on, you're going to think it's slab on grade, but it's elevated.
Mm-hmm.
I really think you're going to see more of that required in these flood prone areas. And flood prone area is going to extend. What is an A today is going to be only part of what is considered an A in the future. And that's the changes I see in the Florida Building Code coming.
Yeah, I think the FEMA zones are going to change drastically. I would completely agree with that.
The flood maps will be redrawn. Yeah, agree.
Big time. So this is Tampa Home Talk. I do want to give out our off-air number before we roll to our final break of the show. 813-377-2775. That's our off-air number. If you or someone you know needs some help, please reach out. We do want to help our listening audience. We do want to help the people that are our regular listeners. 813-377-2775. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. Final thoughts before we run to the break?
Just the materials that we're seeing come out this time. I've seen now PVC walls that you can use that punch in and punch out. So I think there's things that people may want to consider for their first floor if they live beachfront for the future.
I think we're definitely going to see a big shift in what products are being used. I think we'll see inventions of new products that we don't yet have. That's a very real possibility. We'll have a little engineer brains like Leo that definitely creates some stuff. So, all right, this is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. Stick around. We're going to be back right after this break. 813-377-2775. Again, our off-air number, which you can call or text, 813-377-2775. We'll be right back. All right, last segment is 8 minutes. Final talking points, guys?
I'm trying to think. Okay, so Milton's already happened. What do we do? I mean, we got maybe hit documenting damage. I think we did that a lot already, but
we can recap.
Report the claim right away. Don't dilly-dally while you might wait to come back for safety reasons. You need to assess and report right away if you're going to make a claim, so you have a late notice problem.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, maybe
a little thing I'm going to talk about too. Okay.
Yes, go ahead.
This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell, and welcome home right here. On Friday morning, we will be airing this broadcast post Milton. Speaking of all this storm talk, I just have to ask if anybody saw that Tesla is going to be releasing a new phone very soon if it's not out, and it's going to connect to Starlink. Did you guys know that? It's supposed to have like this whole like future, like it's going to give Apple a run for their money is what they're saying. So
wow.
When you think about like areas like North Carolina where there's no freaking cell phone service there right now, they would probably die to have a Tesla phone that connects to Starlink because you'll be the only one with service.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a huge issue up in the Carolinas for sure, is people just being stuck with no way to communicate and no road to get to their house.
Yeah, let's recap on a couple of the points here, Leo and Aaron, so far, and then we'll just wrap up with any final thoughts here.
I think the key point I wanted to bring across is no one who's evacuated should be in a rush to get back. If you've evacuated safely, if you have utilities, if you have running water, and you have someone that stayed local that can check. I'm talking about the non-beach side where you need all those clearances. Just don't be in a rush to get back. When you come back with your stuff. Like the supplies you need, meds, come back with water, come back with your non-perishable, fill up for gas as you're making your way back in. That is crucial. Do not be a burden to the first responders. Let them do their thing. Second, document. Get home. I took 800 pictures before I left. I'll come home and I'll probably take another 800 pictures if there's damage. But if your building isn't safe to document, don't risk yourself. It's stuff. Stuff is replaceable. Even sentimental stuff you think can't be replaced is still less valuable than you. So if your house has partially collapsed, if it's fallen off its piers, if it's moved off its slab, don't enter it to document. Just take some farther shots. Do what you can, but don't go into your house. Nothing in that house that is substantially damaged is worth dying over.
I'm really excited to see how some of these building codes change, Leo, with what you're saying with it being elevated and how they attach to the piers. I mean, I'm expecting some substantial changes to that. It'll be exciting to document and talk about this in the future, because it's going to make Florida and the housing stronger.
Oh, yeah, I think so. And you already see FEMA gently encouraging people to lift, because they go off the tax assessors numbers for value of home, which are
Which
lower.
is crazy. We talked about that last week. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, I didn't even know that. I didn't even think about it.
I think that FEMA I think that's their way of gently encouraging everybody to elevate who has not, so that we can avoid a lot of the problems that we saw during Helene and possibly during Milton.
Well, that's what we talked about last week. We talked about FEMA Technical Bulletin 8, that if you're going to put more than 50% of the value of your home into its reconstruction, bring it up to current code. That's why this exists. I remember firsthand Hurricane Ike, Bayou Vista, and Tiki Island. I talk about this. The homes that were current code only lost their first floor, the floor they're designed to lose. Homes that were in the older code lost both first and second floor. 6 inches difference in storm surge doesn't sound like much, but if it means the difference between losing your habitable space on your second floor versus just losing your game room on the first floor with a pool table and a garage, that makes a big difference. So
Exactly.
I'm in favor of these bigger codes. I've always been in favor of FEMA Technical Bulletin 8, the substantial improvement. Don't put more than 50% of the value of your home into something without future-proofing it.
The sad part about this, Leo, is so many people have been here for years and their tax assessed value is going to be substantially lower than other people. So I think we may see a pretty big wave of like older people that have been here forever. Maybe their house is even paid off and now they're subject to the FEMA 50 rule, which is way lower than their neighbors. We're going to see a weird mix of stuff, especially on the beaches.
Yeah, and I think the other challenge is people just don't have enough coverage. I mean, like I told you all about last time, I've got a house with 327,000 in coverage A. Your flood is capped, and it's going to use every drop of their insurance to bring it up to code, to lift, and some of their retirement, unfortunately. But they've chosen, they want to stay, they love Florida. So, but yeah, I encourage.
Do either of you know the cost to lift a structure? I was talking to someone else about this the other day, and I'm like, I have no idea. Do you know what the cost is to lift a structure? What is it?
It varies. You have
Give me an idea. I know it depends on how big it is and all this stuff.
It varies. There's so many variables. What kind of structure is it? Frame? Is it slab on grade? Is it pure construction? Is it elevated slab? Are we going up 2 stories? Do we need to redo footers? I mean, there are so many variables. So yeah, the answer to that is it's not something you want to do without having an engineer present to help guide you through that process.
Leah, what's the cheapest that would be? What's the cheapest best case scenario that would be?
With what I said earlier about what I'm predicting for a 30% increase to construction costs occurring in the next several months due to the supply shortage of just supplies and the labor shortage, I'm not going to guess. That's a prediction I can't.
I love his lawyery answer. Good job, Leo.
I can't
it's a case by case.
Is it $100,000? You got to know roughly what it is. I mean, we said this is like the floor. We know it's going to go a lot higher.
It's not cheap. I mean, let's just say you had a 1,200 square foot home that you had to elevate. Let's just say it was a pier and beam. It was already a pier and beam home, 1,200 square feet that you need to elevate. You basically have to lift it and put new piers in place. So are you using a crane? Those aren't cheap. I mean, there's too many variables. There's too much. I couldn't even begin to estimate that.
I'm going to have to go find somebody that can tell me that and tell me how much it costs. And I know it's going to change, but I got to know now that I've been asked.
Most people will tell you in this scenario and this is where FEMA 50 rule breaks. Most people tell you if you're in a scenario where you have to lift your home any sizable distance, you might as well just build a new home. That's limits of coverage. Build a new home.
It's always 6 figures on the cases that I've handled. It's not cheap.
That's what it was a ballpark guess. I was thinking 6 figures north of that, but I wasn't.
It will be north of that.
And it's 20 to 20, anywhere between 20 to 40 just to demo. So if you rebuild and start over, that's not cheap either. So,
well, this is Tampa Home Talk. I'm your host, Katrina Madewell. We're already out of time, guys. Our off-air number, if you need some help or know someone that does, or you'd like the expertise of Mr. Leo, Miss Erin, 813-377-2775. We're happy to get you guys connected, or if you just want to start over and buy a new home with us, we can help too. 813-377-2775. Even if you're moving out of state, we got some connections. 813-377-2775. This is Tampa Home Talk. I'm Katrina Madewell. I'll see you all next week. Bye for now.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome home.
Oh.
Perfecto.
Yay. Thank you guys for having me again. Sorry, I was running around and it was like 11 o'clock and I was running errands. And then all of a sudden I looked down and it's 2:50. I'm like, oh my gosh.
No,
Hey,
I got,
don't feel bad because I didn't even know.
Yeah.
no, we got out. We got to Tallahassee. I mean, most people I know are